The only Mazda sedan and hatchback left in their lineup is the venerable Mazda 3. No proteges around, no Mazda 6 around. The Mazda 3 has been the most affordable entry into Mazda's lineup for the past few years. And Mazda has just announced some updates for the little sedan and hatchback for 2026. We're also going to go over pricing here. We're going to look for deals in my area, but we're going to look at sales. Where is the Mazda 3 trending? We're going to look at how it's doing so far in 2026. And at the very end, we'll finish this video on what Mazda needs to do with a next generation Mazda 3 that's well overdue at this point. Guys, if you're a fan of Mazda, smash a like button. I will be getting an MX-5 Miata Club next week for review. It's one of my favorite vehicles that is currently on sale on the market, and it's always a treasure to be able to review it once, sometimes twice a year. I'll get a Miata, and so stay tuned for that coverage. And if you guys are excited for today's content, like I said, I'd appreciate not only a like button hit, but if you really want to support the channel, just watch as long as you possibly can on this video and other videos of mine. That helps me out on the algorithm. Mazda 3 receives small packaging upgrades for 2026, improved standard equipment as well. I'm always a big fan of standard sound systems kicking butt, and it looks like Mazda's doing that here. You won't have to upgrade to the Bose. Yes, the Bose do an incredible job in Mazdas. The Bose sound system in Mazdas are fantastic, but Mazda is giving you this harmonic acoustics 8-speaker audio standard, and Bose is still the upgraded. So I wish, unless I went to a dealer or something and got a lower spec model, I wouldn't be able to tell you how good or not so good this harmonic acoustics, but it is an upgrade versus the last sound system. We also have a starting MSRP of $24,550, and we'll compare that against its chief rivals like the Corolla and the Civic here in a second. The 26 models should be on the way to the dealers at the moment, so before summer's over, you'll see 26s on the lot. You can still get the 6-speed manual, which is typically buried in one trim level, like a front-wheel drive sedan touring. We'll get into it. Front-wheel drive is standard, and of course, all-wheel drive is available, something like the Civic, for example, just doesn't offer, nor do the Koreans, if I remember right. Like the K4 does not offer all-wheel drive. The Corolla does, but it is all-wheel drive. This gives you mechanical all-wheel drive for what it's worth. Blind spot monitor is standard, which is always welcome. The new Corolla for 2026, not new, I should say the 2026 Corolla gets blind spot monitor standard. I'm driving an LE RAV4 this week as well. Wait for my review on that. It's complete base. Other than, distributor add-ons and dealer add-ons, it doesn't have blind spot monitor. So I can't wait to have some fun with the review on that base RAV4 this week as well. LED lighting is also standard across both variants, the sedan and the hatchback, as are body-colored side mirrors with LED turn signals and 16-inch silver aluminum alloy wheels. Other than those small additions for 2026, I don't see any updates across the lineup. All right, so let's get into it. Yes, the manual can be had, for example, on the 2.5S Premium. You can't get it with the turbo. It's front-wheel drive only, and I wish I could drive this. Unfortunately, it's such a small percentage of the sales. Mazda would never put it in a press fleet. Hatchback is a $1,000 price increase over the sedan. Some people hate the design of the hatchback. The hatchback, it's not like it has that great functionality, honestly. It's a very unique looking egg sort of design. I like the hatchback a lot. In fact, when I reviewed the Mazda 3 back in April, it made it to my A tier. It's a bit pricey, but it's fantastic. It's still a really good car to this day. I want to show you something real quick, guys. Unless you're getting a Corolla hybrid, you should not even consider a Corolla over a Mazda 3. Mazda 3 is more fun to drive. It has a much nicer interior, and it has a 6-speed automatic. The CVT, even though it has a real first gear in the Corolla, watch my review on it. It drives like crap. It's really, really poor in terms of transmission logic. It doesn't give you any power in this Corolla with the CVT unless your foot's completely down. All right. This is going to be a much more engaging car to drive, the Mazda 3 over the Corolla. And it doesn't cost that much more. It's only about $600 more than a base Corolla. Unless you're wanting a hybrid Corolla, don't look at the base Corolla. Go to Mazda 3 and you're going to have a much better driving experience. Fuel efficiency, it's probably going to be fairly close. The Corolla might have a slight edge unless you're getting the hybrid, of course. But it's just a so much better car top to bottom than a Corolla. And it doesn't cost you any more when you boil it down, right? A few $100 is not a big deal. Now, there's just one turbo model now. I believe that there used to be a carbon turbo. There used to be a non-premium, they're like a non-plus. I think it was like a turbo premium in the past. Now, if you want the turbos just one trim level, that makes sense to me, honestly. The take rate has to be pretty low on it. And $36,000 is a lot still for a hot hatch. I mean, you can get GR Corollas for around that price now. That car's a lot more fun to drive, has a manual. But if you want all-wheel drive with an automatic transmission, the Mazda 3 is still a lot of fun. It's unique. And it's kind of a sleeper, all right? Where the GR Corolla, I mean, that thing has so much body flare on it. You're going to see that from a mile away. You're not going to suspect a Mazda. The Mazda 3 is the more mature, grown-up hot hatch compared to like a GR Corolla. All right, here are the optional paint colors. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to look for Mazda 3s in my area to see what kind of deals can be had. There's actually not that many, only 108. That's really low volume. Let me show you why that's low volume. If we look at Kia, in the same area that there are only 180 Mazda 3s, there's over 900 Kia K4s, over 1,000 Elantras, over 1,300 Corollas. That's not even counting the Corolla hybrid. And 930 Civics, and that's not counting the Civic hybrid either. Okay, so you're not, more than likely, you're not going to be able to wheel and deal and get the same sort of discount compared to the competition, especially the Koreans, I would say, because of just the sheer fact that there's less volume available. All right, so let's look at the lowest prices you can get a Mazda 3 for right now. Ooh, that carbon looks good. Okay, a $24,000. So, you know, it's about $600 off of MSRP. That's not that great. If we look at like a K4, you're able to get these things for really cheap. $20,000, $3,000 off of MSRP here. Best case scenario. All right. The K4 is a lot roomier than a Mazda 3. The Elantra is a little bit roomier than a Mazda 3. Let's see what you can get an Elantra for. Low 20s. Look at this. 21, $3,000 to $4,000 off, right? And that's a lot cheaper than a Mazda 3. So Mazda is just not competitive on the price. The pricing is seemingly. Now, where is this vehicle built? This vehicle is built in Mexico. So there's tariffs involved, but you can't use that excuse because the K4 is built down in Mexico. All right. And we're seeing big price drops on that. All right. The Corolla. Again, probably my least favorite in this segment, unless we're talking about the Corolla hybrid, that can stand on its own. But the base Corolla, about $1,000 at MSRP, I'd still say spend the extra money if you want a better driving performance aspect over a Corolla. And then the Civic, again, CVT. Here's the thing. I would pick from a driver aspect. I know the Civic handles really well, but from a driver aspect, it's going to be hard to beat under $25,000 Mazda 3 just for the sake that it has a larger engine than the competition, 180 horsepower or so, and it has a 6-speed automatic, which is just so much more engaging and enjoyable to live with on a daily basis. It does cost more than the competition, but it does give you a lot more from a driver's perspective compared to the competition. There are 5 manuals in my area, and it's just, here's where the manual is just a tough sell. The manual is $31,000, and it looks great. It looks cool. $32,000 in the hatchback, right? It only comes in the hatchback, I should say. It doesn't come in the sedan. Its chief rival is going to be the 200 horsepower Civic. All right, which has auto rev matching downshifts. I don't know if this does. I doubt it because it's a Mazda. All right, the Civic is going to handle slightly better. The SI might just be a more desirable vehicle overall for the same price. The Civic Si, however, is a sedan. This is a hatchback, so this has its own charm and functionality compared to the Civic, but it just doesn't compare or compete as well as the Civic at the same price point due to it not having the same engine performance. But if you don't want a turbo, this is a good option for you with a 6-speed manual. So we're going to look at the current state of the Mazda 3. What are its sales looking like? Well, it's not good. We just looked at the volume. About 1/10 of the amount of Mazda 3s compared to a Corolla, and that's not counting the hybrid variant, right? So there's just not a lot out there. Mazda doesn't seem to be making a lot of them, and if they're being tariffed, they're not gonna. Mazda's already shown that they don't care to send too many vehicles into the United States if they're being tariffed really high. And so here we have a reduction in sales in the Mazda 3. It was having an okay year. It was down, well, I wouldn't say okay year, but it was down 12% year to date. So that means with it having been down 50% on the month of July, it was probably about break even on the year, maybe a little bit worse. Maybe it's down 5% or something. But if we look at the Mazda 3 after July, it is down 50% in the month compared to last July. The hatchback down 63%, the sedan down 40%. The Mazda 3 is withering and dying here in the United States. If we look at sales for the Mazda 3 all time, right, it hit its peak here in the US, this column here, back in the late 2000s to mid 2010s, where it was selling regularly over 100,000 a year. It peaked in 2012 at 123,000. And here we are in the 4th generation, which debuted in 2019, and its sales have ever come close to those peak sales. Now, the market has changed from affordable small vehicles and mass volume to more expensive, higher profit margin crossovers. That's just a reality of the situation. But look, I mean, the sales have plummeted from 123,000 in 2022. They went down to just 27,000. That is mind blowing. It is so forgotten about in today's market, the Mazda 3, but it shouldn't be if you want a fun to drive compact sedan. And 30,000 sold in 2023, 38,000 had a small rebound in 2024, but here we are in 2025, and the sales are going to be back down to 30,000, 27,000. It might even go below 27,000 again. They've sold 19,000 so far in 2025, but they might only average about 2,000 units for the last 5 months of the year. So that's 10,000 units added to the 19. So that's 29,000 units. All right. So it's going to be somewhere around where the 2023 totals were, which is not good. That is not a sustainable product, in my opinion. Why are the sales so down? When you see something like the K4 kicking butt, you see high sales volume amongst its competitors. Well, it's getting long in the tooth. Maybe people aren't head over heels about the design or the interior space, okay? Mazda needs to address these if they want. I mean, they might just pull the Mazda 3 from the market and not have any sedans or hatchbacks left. That's a possibility. They could do that, and it's not going to hurt them. All the Mazda 3s are imported, so it's not like, you know, they're not making money on this car, it seems like. Can they revive the success of previous generations Mazda 3s with a new redesign? Well, it certainly will help, but they have to address the weaknesses of the current Mazda 3. First and foremost, it has to be a little bit bigger. Now, you might be saying, Kirk, we don't want bigger cars. I get it. It just needs to be a bit more spacious on the inside. It doesn't have to have I'll maybe reduce the overhang so it's not quite as long as it needs, or it could be, I should say. All right. They can repackage the vehicle with a new redesign. All right. Make it more boxy, like a Golf for example, instead of the really rounded, blobby Mazda 3 hatchback that we have now, the egg-shaped thing, they make it more boxy like a GTI or a Golf. Hello, now we're talking, in my opinion. All right, make it more usable. I'm perfectly fine with the 2.5 liter with a 6-speed auto. I'm perfectly fine with that. But they also need to keep the turbo or put in a new turbo. But like, here's the thing, the turbo is going to get canceled more than likely. Why? Well, we're seeing a slimming of the take rate in it. We're seeing a slimming of the availability of turbos and trim levels. And if you look at the CX-5 redesign, they killed it off. All right, and that's crazy in the CX-5 to kill off the turbo when the take rate was about 20 to 25%, somewhere around there, maybe higher in some instances. All right, and they're killing off the turbo because of a hybrid. Well, Mazda, bring the hybrid in. The Civic hybrid's badass. All right, the Corolla hybrid's really efficient with optional all-wheel drive. The Elantra hybrid, really, really efficient. All right, Mazda needs to come in with a hybrid powertrain that really competes with the Honda Civic hybrid, but they can take it a step further and give it all-wheel drive. I think that would be fantastic, because we know Toyota's not sleeping with evolving their hybrid technology, and we know Hyundai is not sleeping with the evolution of their hybrid technology, as they will have a new Elantra soon in the next year or so, and it will have a new hybrid generation with more power, more performance, and possibly more fuel economy. That's hard to believe. The Elantra hybrid is still the most fuel-efficient car I've ever tested on the channel, where I saw 65 miles per gallon, beating out the Camry that got 62, the Camry LE. But the Camry LE also has way more horsepower, so that one's a bit more impressive feat, in my opinion. Now, do they need to keep a manual? And the answer is, of course they don't. Do I want it as an enthusiast? Of course I do. Is it going to help them revive sales? And the answer is obviously no. A manual is not going to help revive the sales. A hybrid would, a more spacious interior, while still keeping its fun to drive mentality. Jimba Itai, I believe, is what Mazda calls their horse and rider connection. Well, obviously they're getting away from that with the CX-5, as I've roasted the interior on that vehicle. But they cannot do what the CX-5 is doing. They cannot go to full touchscreen. That would be a failure for the Mazda 3. They need to keep the nice touch points, the nice interior, and evolve that Kodo design to be a little bit more spacious, just like they did with the CX-5. But let me know what you would want a next-gen Mazda 3. I mean, it's possible Mazda just pulls the plug on it for the United States market due to tariffs and due to it not being very competitive at this point with a lack of a hybrid. And maybe it's just too price competitive. Maybe there's so few enthusiasts in this segment that would opt for a 6-speed auto that it's kind of withering out there. All right. It costs $2-3 grand more than its closest rival. In like a Corolla or a K4, when you're looking at entry-level prices, most of those people don't care about what transmission it has. They care about maybe fuel economy, and they care about what's my monthly payment. And that is not helping Mazda here with the a little bit higher barrier of entry for the more enjoyable to drive Mazda 3. I'm going to sign out there. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for more Mazda content. Like I said, I'm going to Japan this fall, well, in next month, essentially in a month and a half, to give you hands-on coverage at the Japan Mobility Show. All right, and Mazda will have a booth there. At the last show, we saw the iconic SP. Hopefully we see that again and a more production-ready sheet metal. Have a great day, guys. Long live the Mazda 3, and peace out.